One of the more important aspects of biodiversity is the ecosystem services it provides us with. Now, ecosystem services are an important concept in the APES curriculum, and it's one that a lot of people haven't heard of before they take this class. So let's just jump in and get you learned up on this. Okay, so unfortunately, humans tend to be rather pragmatic and selfish to some extent. And so, in order to get us to protect natural ecosystems, you've got to provide us with a rationale. You've got to explain to us what it is about this ecosystem that I personally benefit from, and that's called ecosystem services. So ecosystem services is a concept that was generated in order to help people wrap their heads around what personal benefit they get from protecting natural ecosystems. And there's four of these ecosystem services that have been delineated, and they are the provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting ecosystem services. And one way you can remember this is just to think of the acronym PERKS, right? Like there's perks, like rewards. So there are perks to preserving ecosystems. So let's start with provisioning. So provisioning is essentially what are the products that I can get out of an ecosystem? A healthy ecosystem can provide me with sustainable source of products, and those products can be fish, the ability to graze animals, to hunt, to get fruit and spices out of a forest, raw materials like wood and fertilizer, uh, medicinal plants, and just fresh water to drink. Right? Without healthy ecosystems, I don't have that. Regulating services that's basically about how it is that ecosystems regulate natural systems and how we benefit from that. So, for instance, think about what water looks like when it is running down the street. It doesn't look that great, but you know what? A natural ecosystem can help cleanse that water and turn it into something drinkable. Same thing is true for the air. One of the main things when it comes to regulating services is protection from extreme events. So, oftentimes, um, flooding events on coastal areas we can be protected from them by well-preserved marshland ecosystems, salt marshes, mangrove forests. So these often have a tendency to reduce wave action and protect residents of coastal areas from flooding. Trees in mountains prevent flooding events. They prevent landslides. So one of the main things that humans see in regulating services is protection from disasters. But there's also things like carbon sequestration, right? So the atmospheric carbon dioxide level is regulated by a healthy a forest ecosystem. The NPP is essentially carbon that was in the atmosphere that's now part of a tree. Also, pollination. So our crops need to be pollinated. Well, where do these pollinators live? Well, a lot of them live in natural ecosystems. They don't live in farms, and so without a healthy ecosystem, you don't have that benefit and or that service, if you will. Also, it recycles decomposing organisms. They can break down toxins, and also provide biological pest control. So think about bats come out of the forest at night and eat bugs that would infect humans and livestock. Wasps that live in the forest come in and they lay eggs in caterpillars and protect us from having caterpillars eat all of our crops. So here's an example of one. Okay, so a healthy forest ecosystem prevents flooding and all the problems associated with excess runoff. So by having forests, I get more infiltration, I get recharged aquifers, and I get less flooding during a rain event. Supporting ecosystem services, basically this is saying what it is that an ecosystem does to support life. Okay, so basically support all ecosystems. So first and foremost, they provide habitat. They provide places for animals to live. So think about like migrating birds need a place to live. Juvenile fish need a place to live. So that's basically providing habitat. Soil formation. You don't really think about soil very often, but soil is something that's very precious, and it gets generated by ecosystems. It doesn't get generated by land that's been scraped by human beings. Then there's nutrient cycling, obviously. So if you want to get nitrogen back into the soil, these ecosystems do that through a modification. Same thing with water cycling, and just primary production, right? So the NPP of this forest provides food that is the basis of food web. So it's pretty important in that regard. Those are supporting ecosystem services. So a couple of good examples would be mangrove trees we see over here. In the roots of them, little tiny fish can live, and they get protection from big fish, so they grow. If you don't have the mangroves, then you don't have the fisheries that they support. Also, too, wetlands basically help water not run off and therefore infiltrate. And then they get into the aquifers, which then recharge rivers. So that entire ecosystem that is associated with the river, it wouldn't be there if it didn't have the wetland to support it. And finally, we have cultural ecosystem services. This is basically sort of the aesthetics of nature, so the spiritual appeal, the psychological relaxation we feel from being in nice, beautiful, natural areas. So, examples of cultural ecosystem services are think about a national park. Okay, so you go there, you go hiking, you go camping, you go kayaking. You know, people spend a lot of time in these places for a reason. They provide a psychological benefit, a spiritual uplift. They're very important. And it's difficult to put a price on it, but it's really basically priceless. Also, you think about this. Think about movies. Like it provides the background for movies, the inspiration for art. These are things that are important to human beings at a cultural level, and we take them for granted. We won't have them. Ecotourism. You know, like my wife and I, we travel all over the world, and when we go, we usually want to go kayaking. We want to hike. We want to see wild animals, and so it's a huge industry that only exists because countries like Costa Rica will protect their natural habitats so that people can enjoy them and pay money to go see them. Uh, it provides the inspiration for art, for different aspects of our culture. And there's also some spiritual significance. There's certain places that are considered to be spiritually important, certain caves, certain mountains, certain trees, certain valleys. And also, you could just argue that we just get a certain sense of spirituality when we're in beautiful, uh, natural ecosystems that are the way they were intended to be. So think about Mount Fuji. It definitely has spiritual and cultural importance. Imagine paving it over. You would ruin it, right? Uh, Wetland areas have lots of birds. People like my wife and I, we like to go kayaking and canoeing. We like to look at birds. We like to just listen to nature out there. And that's a big money draw. So like I said, there's the ecotourism rather provides a huge amount of money into a lot of economies in countries that make an effort to protect these natural ecosystems. So that's ecosystem services. I hope I didn't run too long. Thanks for